the world still reeling 48 hours removed from the shootings in Orlando, Florida, in the US at the Pulse nightclub. The worst mass shooting in US history. One man, 50 people dead, and another 50 injured in a very, very tragic incident. And it has had ripples across the entire world, including here in Australia. There have been vigils everywhere, one of which was held in Taylor Square, which is the heart of the gay district here in Sydney. I know a lot of the LGBT community affected by it. One of those people who spoke at the event was Christine Forster from the city of Sydney, and she joins us now. Good morning, Christine.
Hi, Christine.
Morning, Rove. Hi, Sam.
So what was the feeling like for the Australian LGBT community when there was essentially an attack, and as much as it can be painted in the light of, well, it was a religious attack or a terrorism attack, it was obviously in a gay nightclub, and so there is a sense of hate crime there as well.
Oh, yeah, look, this is plainly an act of hate, an act of terror, specifically targeting the gay community. An attack on people in a place where they would normally gather, specifically because they feel safe there, in a gay club. And many people go out to gay clubs specifically because that's where they feel safe. That's where they feel that they can, they're amongst their own community. They're not going to get vilified or discriminated against in that environment. So, I think that the initial feeling was, certainly my own feeling, was one of shock, horror. Over the course of the day, and people were sort of getting in touch with each other immediately to sort of, reach out to each other about this horrible incident. And I guess over the course of the day, people came to sort of together, and there was a sense of unity at the vigil last night, very much, that we stand in solidarity. We share the grief and horror for the victims in Orlando, but, our community stands together, and we'll remain unbowed by this act of terror.
And I think, you briefly touched on it, but, I think one of the saddest things about this absolute tragedy is the fact that, they did go into he did go into a gay nightclub, and I've been there with gay friends, and the most beautiful thing about being in a place like that is you see people being so free, and it's so beautiful because people are just like, this is who I am. I'm with people who accept me and love me, and this is so fantastic. So for people to die in this situation is so sad. But I need to ask Christine, you hear about copycat hate crimes. Do you feel safe in Sydney, or is there an element of feeling scared that something like that might happen in Sydney?
Well, look, of course, there's an awareness that something like that might happen now. It's a heightened awareness, I suppose. But Virginia and I went out last night after the vigil. We were in Stonewall, and Stonewall was certainly busier than it normally would be on a Monday night. And I think that was probably, because people wanted to show that they're not going to be bowed by this, that they won't be forced by an act of terror to change their lifestyles and what they do and how they go about living their lives in Sydney. Although I think plainly, people feel that, a heightened awareness that something like this, God forbid, that some psychopath would have some idea about doing something like this here in Australia. But obviously an incident like this does raise awareness that, we're not as safe as we'd like to think that we are.
Now, one of the issues we talked about earlier, of course, is gun control in the US. We spoke to Philip Alpers about that from the gun control lobby here in Australia, and this is what he had to say about it.
No, it's not going to change anything because the Americans have, as we've seen from previous massacres, they have one response, and that is first they pray, and then they blame somebody else, and then they buy more guns.
Now, as a politician, but also someone who is from the conservative side, what is your take on this and how the US handles its gun laws?
Well, I think the US needs to sort out its gun laws. No member of the public should have access to the type of weapons that have been used in this attack and others. I mean, there is just no necessity for that. I'm not a believer in people being able to carry guns of any sort for no reason. and they need to get on and address this, because otherwise, sadly, I think that that they're just going to see more and more of these incidents. They have an horrific number of these incidents already. If I was an American citizen, I would be outraged, and I'd be probably marching on the streets to get them to change these laws.
Yeah, well, hopefully something can be done. But in the meantime, we thank you very much for your time, Christine Forster.
My pleasure. Thanks.